A 1031 exchange is one of the most powerful tools in real estate, yet so many people don't know about it. Hi, I'm Randy Ihara.
And I'm Dan Ihara.
And welcome to the Advisor Podcast. We are real estate wealth advisors here in Hawaii, and in today's episode, we will answer the questions that you want to know. So first of all, what is a 1031 exchange? What are the rules? What are the timelines that you have to abide by to successfully complete a 1031 exchange? And second, why do a 1031 exchange? Some people know what it is, but don't understand how to fully utilize it to its maximum potential. Just a quick background, Dan and the Ihara team have successfully completed over 400 1031 exchanges, avoiding and minimizing tens of $millions in capital gains taxes. We also train hundreds of real estate agents across the country and how to do a 1031 exchange, but even more, how to use a 1031 exchange as a vehicle to build, protect, and transfer wealth. So, getting right into it, Dan, tell us, what is a 1031 exchange?
Well, the government's given us a gift, right, for investors. They've allowed investors to be able to sell an asset that has significant gain or any kind of gain, and defer that capital gain tax. Anything you sell, any asset that you have that has gain, you're going to be subject to capital gains tax. So stocks, bonds, and other instruments that you have, when you sell that, the government's going to ding you on some capital gains tax. Real estate's the only asset today that the government's given you a pass on. And it's called a 1031 exchange. They allow you to defer your capital gains tax when you sell an investment property and buy another investment property. And a wise man once told me years ago that they started doing this because they wanted to help investors not tax them on stimulating the economy, right? And so that's why they say, well, if you sell an investment property, you must buy another investment property, another property you do not live in, not for your gain, but to stimulate the economy and provide housing for others.
So that's why the government gives us that break.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things that many people don't know about. We've been specializing in this, for 20 years now. Our very first 1031 exchange seminar was close to 20 years ago.
Wow.
And we realized that there was a huge need for information on this deferral of taxes because it was the number one enemy to generational wealth. We gain wealth in real estate, but then people end up giving the government, state and federal governments, this tax, it's a burden that they're applied to them. So what we do is we've been helping them defer that to a point where we can eliminate it.
Oh, yeah. So tell me a little bit, what does it mean to defer? And then how do you eliminate it?
It's kind of like kicking the can down the street, right? I mean, you're going to sell an investment property, buy another one, and sometimes sell that property, buy another one, and sometimes sell that property and buy another one. So you could do this as many times as you desire, right? But the way you eliminate it is you die. I mean, basically, we're all going to do it. And when you pass away, you get a step up in cost basis, which means that the cost basis rises from, instead of where you purchased it, rises to the value at the date of death. And if that happens, your heirs get it at the stepped up cost basis. Therefore, if they were to sell it within a reasonable period of time, attorneys or CPAs tell us about 6 months, then you defer your capital gains tax on that. So the heirs could eventually sell it and not pay any capital gains tax.
Oh, wow. So that's actually how you fully eliminate all the capital gains taxes.
Yeah. And it's depending on which state you're in, I believe there's 9 states without state capital gain tax, but many states have a state levied capital gains tax. State of Hawaii is 7.25%. California, I think, is at 14.2% or 14.4%. And each state is a little different, right? And on the state level. On the federal level, though, it'll go up to 20% of the gain for it doesn't matter what state you're in. It's a federal tax of long-term gain tax. And then if on top of that, they have this if your adjusted gross income is greater than, I think it was 3.8%. If it's over $400,000, they charge you another 3.8% on top of that. So in the state of Hawaii, we use a round number of roughly about 30%. California, it'll be much higher than that as well.
Wow. So yeah, for all the people that don't want to pay 30% of their profit to the government, how do you do a 1031 exchange? What are the rules to it?
Yeah, they have basically two main rules to this game. Number one is the identification rule, and the second is the closing rule. So the identification rule basically says that you must identify your replacement property, up to 3 of them, within 45 days from the closing of your relinquished property, the property you're selling. And so many people, they look at that and go, wow, 45 days, that's not enough time for me to find another replacement property. And they say, I don't want to do it. And then so I say to them, Randy, I go, what if we give you 90 days? And I remember the conversation with this lady, and I asked her that question. She goes, well, Dan, you can't change the rules to the IRS, can you? And I said, well, no, I'm not here to do that. I'm here to change how we show up to those rules. How we show up to the rules, mainly basically saying that before you sell your property, let's go find your replacement property. And that's kind of the biggest hack that we have on the 1031 exchange, Randy, is that we focus on the 1031 exchange and not in the property we're selling, but the property we're buying. You see, ladies and gentlemen, you don't execute a 1031 exchange successfully until you close on the replacement property. So if that's the case, we start with that in mind. We start with the end in mind. So before we even sell real estate, before we sign the listing agreement actually with our clients, we talk about the replacement property. We talk about what would you like to have happen at the end? Right? What does that look like? Are you looking for income? Are you looking to bless your family? Are you looking for a passive income? It just depends on what every client wants. And funny thing is everybody wants something different, right? So it's always customized. But it starts with a consultation with our clients. We call these strategy sessions. And we offer these strategy sessions to our clients so that we can better understand what their ultimate goal is. Whatever their ultimate goal is, then we work it backwards. Yeah, and that's kind of why we've never failed. Well, that's part of the reasons why. The second other half of that is we have a safety net, right? In the event that you go up to the time period of your designation, but you find out that that's not a good property to buy, we have a safety net. And in future episodes, we'll talk more about that safety net. It's generally speaking called a DST, a Delaware Statutory Trust. It's a trust that owns real estate that's acknowledged by the IRS for a 1031 exchange.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely go into DSTs in the next episode if you guys want to stay tuned for that. But just to recap, what I'm hearing you say is that when you sell an investment property and doing a 1031 exchange, from the day that it closes when you sell it, you then have 45 days to identify a couple of properties that you want to purchase.
Yeah.
And so people that are scared that 45 days isn't enough, that's because they're starting to look too late and they need to start looking earlier, right? So they have more than 45 days.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, we'll start writing offers as soon as the selling property goes into escrow.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'll even time the closing where the buy and the sale will happen simultaneously, ensuring 100% success on the 1031 exchange.
Yeah.
I think I heard you mention earlier on part of the rules that the property needs to be like kind.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about like kind.
Yeah,
What is that?
It sounds tricky, right? It sounds like if I sell a condo, I got to buy a condo. That's actually not true. They define like kind as being real estate in the United States, right? And so if you sell a condo, you can buy a single family home, you can buy a theater, a shopping center. You can't buy an airplane, can't buy a boat, but you can buy real estate, anything real estate in the United States.
Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's a shopping mall or a theater.
No, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. As long as it's real estate and you do not live in it.
Okay, so I could sell my house and buy a condo.
Yep, you sure could.
Okay, great. And tell us, why do a 1031 exchange? I know there's, kind of 5 main benefits that we talk to about clients of why people do a 1031 exchange. Because a lot of people think that a 1031 exchange is to defer the capital gains tax. And that's true, and that's a huge benefit on why you want to do that. But we think of it more as a vehicle to design the life that you want to live, right? And so these 5 main that we'll talk about is, how to defer and then eliminate the capital gains taxes, right? you could save hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that, right? And then how do you make more money with your investment property, right? If you go from a 2% rate of return from your investment property to a 5% rate of return, you more than double your money. And we're able to actually help clients retire earlier, right? Also, people want to go into a newer asset. People that have an older home that has deferred maintenance and they don't want to take care of the roof. They don't want to take care of the single wall construction or the old deferred maintenance. They can go into something newer. The fourth benefit, and a lot of people really, really love this, is the passive income, right? They don't want to worry about the tenants. They don't want to worry about the trash. They don't want to worry about just all the issues with having a rental property. And the last thing that we'll talk about is, how do you bless your family today, right? How do you create the legacy that you want to bless your children and create a legacy that lasts generations? Mm-hmm. So let's just go one at a time, Dan. Let's start at the top. Tell us an example of, how we're able to help defer and eliminate the capital gains tax for our clients.
We had a client that was an astute investor when they were younger. And I want to say younger, was in their 30s, late 20s, early 30s. But that was a while ago. In fact, this person was 85 years old. So they had been doing this for a while, right? And they bought a property for, guess this, Randy, in Hawaii, $25,000. Wow. They bought an investment property. And today it's worth over $1 million. Mm-hmm. And they said, I don't want it, but I don't want to pay the capital gains tax. Yeah. So what we did is simply we sold it. We bought another property and we eliminated the burden of the capital gain tax. And that's really the simplest path to go for people that have bought a home a long time ago, but they don't want it anymore, right? Like you said, the tenants, the toilets, the trash, the taxes, now they're rising insurance rates that are encumbering the property and increasing the expenses to a point where, they're not making a ton of money.
Awesome. And I'm guessing, how much do you think that capital gains tax bill is going to be?
Oh gosh, in north of $300,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're able to help them save $300,000.
I think it was $380,000. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He was pretty happy.
That's incredible.
He was pretty happy. Yeah. You could say that for sure.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the second benefit. How are we helping clients, make more money with their investment property, even enough so that they could retire early?
Yeah, we had a client that had a beautiful estate up in the North Shore, and it was gorgeous. And they bought it when their kids were young, and it was like a getaway, right? And so they had it. They enjoyed it when their kids were younger. They had it for a long time, and it increased in value. And as their kids graduated from high school, went away to college, they never came back. And then I remember he kept telling me, "Man, Dan, I'm tired of this. It was such a big 4-acre parcel. He'd have a sit down mower, and he'd have to do it for like hours at a time just to cut his yard." And he said, "Dan, I'm tired of this already. I don't want this." And you know what? We've got a tenant there, but he doesn't pay much, right? And so he had very little income. And then his wife decided to retire. She was a nurse, and bless her heart, she got to retire, and she had a great job. And he's like, "Wait a minute, what about me? I want to retire too." But he said, "Well, I can because I need income." And so when we did the math on it, Randy, we actually sold that property. I think it was like 1.5. We sold that and we were able to generate him enough money for him to retire.
Wow.
Yeah. And he said to me, "Dan, you changed my life." And he's become a good friend of ours as well, and just a good human being. But these are situations where we're allowed to, using this vehicle, to really make an impact on people's lives. I mean, just think of that. When he told me that we were able to help him such that he could retire and have the life worth living, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's really about changing their life. And yeah, it was a really nice story.
Yeah. Part of the cool thing about that one is I remember sitting down with him at the table, and he's going over all of his income and his expenses and how much income he needs passively to be able to retire and sustain the life he desires. And we were going over the math, and he was getting about like $2,000 a month in his rental property. Yeah. And then we showed him how he could get more. He could get, $5,000, $7,000. And that it just clicked for him that
Yeah.
he was actually able to retire now instead of down the road in 5,
Yeah.
8 years.
Yeah.
So that was really, really cool one to be a part of.
Yeah. It was really, and he tells that story all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun.
Awesome. The third one is getting rid of an older home. Tons of people here in Hawaii have an older home, a lot of deferred maintenance, the roof is falling apart. What would you say to those families or those people that kind of don't want their older home anymore?
Yeah, you don't have to be a burden and slave to your old properties any longer. You really don't. You can actually let them go. You can free yourself from the burdens of owning of something with deferred maintenance, as long as you execute a 1031 exchange and you buy something a little newer. I mean, it's pretty simple. That was a family. They actually had 2 properties. They were both. One was in Wahiawa, one was on the North Shore as well. And their parents had it a long time ago, and there were a number of units in there. In that part of our island, and it was so funny because I drove up to the house, and in the tenants, the little kid, he was probably about 7 or 8 years old. He's carrying one of his pets, and one of his pets was a chicken. And they're living in the house. It was pretty interesting. They didn't want the house. The owners didn't want it because they didn't want to have the burden of owning that. It's really bad. One of the homes, the roof was so bad and leaking for so long, it was black and mildewy inside and just a health hazard. Yeah. And so they just didn't want the liability attached to owning an old house. So we sold that, and we bought a newer home, a newer property, generated more money, and then also removed the burden of having to worry about the property anymore. Yeah.
What's something that you wish more people would understand about owning real estate, owning an older home, or a home that has just a lot of maintenance, a lot of yard work, cutting the trees down, mango tree?
Yeah.
Like
I think from the last 20 years, Randy, I realized the world looks at real estate as if it's like a house with doors, windows, and a roof, right? And that's true if you live in it, right? You should have an emotional attachment to it. You should have a different perspective on that home. But if you don't live in it, right, and it's truly an investment property, they should really consider that as an investment. And what we've been doing over the last 20 years is unlocking wealth in this investment and repositioning that wealth into another asset that generates more money, gives them a peace of mind, removes the burden of owning it, and eliminates capital gains tax. And we do that all through the 1031 exchange.
Yeah, I'll do that all day. Okay.
Yeah.
What about this fourth one, passive income? I would love passive income. I'm sure a lot of people out there listening would just love passive income, right?
Yeah. In our state, the laws we're a consumer protection state, so our laws are tilted towards the tenant, right? So sometimes it's hard to get the tenant out. And sometimes we have many clients that the tenants don't pay, and it's just an emotional and financial burden on them. And one of our families, they had a 5-unit in Nuuanu, and it seemed okay until it wasn't. And then, they had it for 35 years, and it did okay. But there was more deferred maintenance and things like that. But they were just tired of having the tenants move in and move out. There's 5 units in one house, problems within the tenants, and they just didn't want to deal with in Hawaii we call it pilikia, right? Family, the disputes that come around. And so they said they really wanted a passive income. So what we did is we sold that property for them. I think that was closer to $2 million. We sold that property for them. We bought into, we did a 1031 exchange, and the replacement property was this thing called a DST, Delaware Statutory Trust. And that allowed you to have passive income. I mean, passive such that you don't even know who the tenant is. You don't really care because they pay you every month. And all you get is passive income. Income comes in, and no one ever calls you to say the dishwasher broke or the plumbing is leaking or the neighbor tenant's bad. Nobody calls on that. It's just money that shows up in your bank account, right? And so, so much so that we've been a real fan of this asset class. So much so that we bought our own. We invested our own when COVID happened. We sold an investment property and we moved into the DST, and And I was just like every other client, by the time I had a good property manager, which I thought, until I realized that when I did the math, he didn't keep up with rental increases, but yet my expenses were rising. What happened to my cash flow? Well, I was at a 2.1% cap rate. Not a great one, right? So we sold that. We did a 1031 exchange into the DST, and I'm getting 4.5% today. Doubled my money. And I never have to worry about the tenants. And I've never even thought about that. All I just, it's so funny. I tell people, true story is I get a lot of mail. And most of my mail is people want money from me. That's one piece of mail that I open with a smile because it's passive income. I just get money every month. Yeah.
Yep. Getting money without doing anything.
Yeah.
That's the dream. Okay. You want to give us maybe a quick 30-second information about the DST? We're going to go into the next episode, but just a little teaser.
Yeah. The DST it's an asset class that was approved in, I believe, 2004. And the reason why most people don't know about it is it's only for accredited investors. So it's not something that's publicly marketed or advertised. But it could be a number of things. It could be a group of investment properties or just one standalone. The ESPN News Center is a DST. The Amazon warehouse in North Carolina is a DST. Hotels in Austin, Texas could be. So it's an asset class that they're professionally managed, and you invest in it, and they give you money every month. Right, in a nutshell. We'll go into more detail in the future, though.
Okay, great. Now the last one that's very interesting, and I'm sure is very applicable to a lot of families out there. But how do you bless your family today? What does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, most families, we don't want to give our kids money, right? Remember that. I don't want to give you money. Anyways, it's like most families, you don't want to spoil your kids. So, but with real estate, there's this thing you can do with a 1031 exchange. You can actually sell an investment property, buy another investment property, and allow that child to rent it from you, to live there. Whether they pay or not, they could stay there. And you could even do that such that you can co-own it with them so that when you pass away, they get it tax-free. Okay? And that's how we eliminate capital gains tax. But we've been doing this for a while. The most touching story was a family. We met them in a beat-up old house in Kapalama, and they did not want that house. It took forever to clear out the tenant because it was a bad tenant and all the stuff. And they said, I just don't ever want to own real estate anymore. And so when I asked them, do you need the income to sustain the life you desire? They go, no, Dan. They kind of laughed at me. I don't need the money. And so then I asked, well, who would you like to bless? Interestingly enough, the person sitting next to them was a granddaughter. And the granddaughter was there because the granddaughter always helped out grandma and grandpa, right? And she says, well, at the end of the day, who's going to get it? So, well, I'm planning to give it to her. I said, and I asked them, so what are you waiting for? They go, well, what do you mean? Well, what if we sold that investment property and bought another investment property, a property you did not live in, executed a 1031 exchange, which could bless your granddaughter? See, the real thing, the story around that one was really cool because she was a new nurse. She'd been doing this job for about 2 years. She wanted to buy in a building that she couldn't quite qualify for because she didn't have the down payment. So we used the money from the sale of the property as the down payment. She took out a mortgage. They co-owned it together, and she was able to execute a 1031 exchange with the plan that, knowing that at some point grandma and grandpa are going to pass away, it goes directly to the granddaughter tax-free. It was going to go to her anyways, but it went to her probably 10 or 20, maybe even 30 years prior to grandma and grandpa passing away.
Wow, that's so awesome to see. And even for the grandparents to watch their granddaughter enjoy that.
Yeah, and the follow-up touching story was they told me that on Saturdays they'd go to her place to have dinner. She would make them dinner.
Wow.
It's like, it was full circle, right? Grandma got to bless the granddaughter, and the granddaughter get to say gratitude and thank you to grandma and grandpa for blessing her.
Yeah.
Every week. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm sure the relationship got a lot closer.
Yeah, it's life-changing, These things that we do, it's really designed to have the life you desire, right? Yeah. And that's the questions we ask our clients. At the end of the day, what do you want it to look like?
Yep.
Yeah. And there's a lot of ways to do this, right?
Yeah.
We've done over 400 of these 1031 exchanges, and very rarely are they the same.
Yeah.
They're almost always different.
Well, Dan, that's all we have planned for today. We're all about practical advice and how do you really implement that into your situation.
Yeah.
So what's one piece of advice, one tactical piece that you'd have for our listeners?
I truly believe that money is good for the good it does. And understanding what it could do matters. And there's a lot of ways you could do this, a lot of ways you can utilize the 1031 exchange that most don't really understand. So I think my advice would be to connect with folks that can help you. If you'd like some advice, feel free to reach out to us. We offer free strategy sessions for anybody that has a question or concern regarding their assets.
Yeah. So if any of this resonated with you and you want to, bless your family today, build passive income, or just remove the headache of having properties, you can reach out to us on our website, iharateam.com, and we can book your free strategy session, talk about your specific situation, and create a plan, right? So how do you get to where you want to go? Well, thank you all for listening. We look forward to seeing you next week or the week after that. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, and aloha.